Okay, welcome to today's episode. This is episode number 3 of the Faith-Driven Leadership Call with Eliam Fuentes, where we cover all things faith, leadership, public speaking, communication, and emotional intelligence. Now, before this video begins, let me actually provide clarity on what is a faith-driven leader. Now, for context, I see every single human on this planet as a leader. Now, here's what I mean by that. In every way, shape, or form, you're a leader. Whether you're leading a community, you're leading a team, you're leading a business, you're leading your family, heck, you're leading yourself every single day when you wake up in this life. So that makes you a leader because you're leading your life. Now, here's the thing. Here's where the faith part comes in. Something that I've noticed, especially in my 25 years of life, when I do business with people, when I grow in relationship with people, the people that I tend to attract, one of the common traits that we all have is that we operate from faith. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean operating from faith instead of fear. Faith over fear. Now, faith can mean so many different things for people. Something that I found is that faith sometimes means, hey, faith is my relationship with God. Faith can also mean the certain devotion that you practice that carries out your faith, such as Christian, Muslim, Jew, Catholic, whatever it may mean to you. For me, I'm Christian, and that's how I practice out my faith. The other one I see is like for people, they look at faith, the value of faith, as a mindset for them, meaning operating from faith over fear. So that's to provide context of it. Now, when I see people out there in the world, the people I do business with, people I grow relationships with, I think of it and I sit down, I'm like, okay, that is a faith-driven leader. That is a leader out there that's on a mission, that's on a vision, that they're chasing their goals, and they're leading themselves every step of the way, and they're operating and they're driven by faith. That's where the term faith-driven leadership came in from. So we're bringing in all the faith-driven leaders together, entrepreneurs and content creators, professionals that see themselves as a faith-driven leader, and sharing our expertise and our knowledge on those 5 topics that we shared with all of you on here today. And in today's call, what you're about to watch soon is you're going to watch the communication wheel of life. How communication is directly related to every single area of your life. And we ended up covering 8 different areas of your life. We covered faith, we covered family, finances, health, career and business, relationships, community, and education/wisdom. So enjoy this call that you're gonna watch today, because this is a segment of our faith-driven leadership call that we went live with other students that they also asked questions and they receive all this value, and here's the value for you. So what we're gonna talk about today is the communication wheel of life and the importance of the communication wheel. So we're gonna get into the communication wheel of life and how communication is directly impacted and impacts every single area of your life. And for context, the main point of this message today is for you to understand that your effective communication determines the quality of how effective you live your life. So I'll repeat that again. Effective communication equals an effective life. So the better you at communication, the higher the quality your communication becomes, the higher the quality your life will become. The more effective the life you live will become. And the way that we're gonna share it and teach it on here today is through the communication wheel of life. And every single person out there has areas in their life that they focus on. And today we ended up picking 8 areas. And those 8 areas that we're gonna talk about and show how communication is related to those areas and how you can improve it is going to be first, faith. The second one is family. Third one is finances. The fourth one is going to be health. The fifth one is going to be career and business. The sixth one is gonna be community. The seventh one is gonna be relationships. And the 8th one is going to be wisdom education. So let's get into and talk about every single one of these areas. First and foremost, faith is a really, really big thing. And when I think about faith and how communication relates to faith, it relates to in the boldness of it. In terms of when you communicate out there and you have a belief and you stand on something and this is what you believe in, your relationship with God, the way you practice your devotion and carry out your faith. Faith is what communication is what requires you to be bold and express your message. It requires you to use your voice and share your gifts and talents with the world that supports the message and make sure that everyone hears it out there. Another way that communication is directly related to faith is that when you're in prayer, prayer is how you directly communicate with God. to make your requests, to ask for forgiveness on things you may need forgiveness on, to seek repentance, or to have just a communication and create a relationship with God. And prayer is one of those ways we use to communicate in our faith. And I ask you here is like, how often is it that you're praying and seeking the Lord and seeking God when it comes to your communication? Or are you just having no communication at all and just going about life as it is? Another thing as well about communication directed to faith is that worship. Worship is a way of expression where you can use your body, you can use your hands, you can use your soul and your spirit to be able to worship and sing and give praise. And communication is directly related to that, because you need to communicate what your feelings and your emotions are to be able to boldly express your faith. Now, there's multiple different avenues how communication is directly related to faith. And what I'll share with people to be able to take away is, how strong is your faith? How boldly are you willing to communicate what is that you believe on and stand on and not shy away from it, even when it feels uncomfortable? Or on the other hand, are you trying to communicate in a way that displays fear, that displays anxiety, that displays scarcity, that displays doubt and nervousness? Or step into that faith and step into that courage and say what you believe in and stand on it. And like Moses, even when the fear was present, they still had the faith to state what they believed in and make sure they used their words into action. One of the things I'll leave you with here before we go on to the next one is that at the very beginning, when the Bible was written, first was the Word, and God is the Word, and He spoke things into existence. So that's just to show that your words have power. Your ability to communicate can actually shape the reality of your entire life, all if you just have faith and you communicate that faith with boldness. So that's number one. The second part we're going to go into is going to be family. And this is where it gets really fun, because communication when it comes to family, like who can relate to having family drama, family problems, or conflict and arguments or disagreements, but at the same time, they're family. And who could relate to, when family is peaceful, when it's joyful, when we're having fun and celebrating and gathering. And what I notice is that communication is the one that plays a big part in each of those segments. For example, whenever there's family conflict that arises, are you a type of communicator that is willing to go have the hard, tough conversations and confront the conflict? Or are you the type of communicator that's just gonna, like, you know what, I'm just gonna sweep things under the rug and I'm just gonna let things be. I'm not gonna mention a word, and things are just gonna fester up. By sweeping things under the rug and not having those tough conversations when it comes with family, a lot of anger and frustration and resentment can tend to build over time. You can then form different stories and beliefs of what might be that might not be true. But if you're willing to have those tough conversations and confront the conflicts and communicate what you're feeling and expressing them, you can move the needle forward to, a healthier family, something that is forward moving and that brings you love and celebration and joy in your family. Another thing about communication is that when communication is tied to your family, when you grew up, depending on your environment, whether it's your mom, dad, who you grew up with, believe it or not, the root of your communication comes from how the people around you used to communicate. For example, I'll share my upbringing. I had my dad. He's very quiet, very timid. He only speaks when necessary. And then I have my mom, who's really expressive, really vocal, really loud, like a Hispanic mom. So she's not afraid to communicate what she wants to communicate. And as I'm growing up in my teenage years and childhood years, I spent most of my time with my mom. So therefore, I ended up picking up certain behaviors and habits on how she communicates versus how my father communicated. I communicate more like how my mom does. Therefore, it makes me more of a greater communicator because she was expressive, she was vocal, she stand on what she believed in, and sometimes she got rowdy, especially as a Hispanic mom. And that's okay. So what I'm sharing with you is that the people you were raised with in your family or your environment, whether it's your siblings, your parents, or who you were around most of the time in your upbringing, that dictates what behaviors and habits you have around your communication. And as you grow older, you got to realize that it's your responsibility to grow your family, to create that connection, and an effective communicator, someone who practices their communication, is willing to have those tough conversations even when they don't feel like it, because they know that if they don't have that communication channel, it could lead to a whole different path that can have anger, resentment, frustration. I've lived it personally. And when I noticed that, hey, my communication is not healthy with my family, it required me to go back and give forgiveness, receive forgiveness, and give forgiveness so that we can not sweep things under the rug no more and communicate in a healthier manner with love, expression, and joy. So that's how communication is directly related to your family. Going on to number three. Number three is finances. When it comes to communication and finances, the way you talk about money, the way you see money, the way you subconsciously tell yourself about money has to do with your finances. For example, a story of mine, there's this amazing friend I have, and she's in the real estate industry. So picture this, she's in the real estate industry, and real estate is a lot to do with houses and money. So houses and money. And she tells me, and she's making lots of good money, and she's doing really successful in her business. And I asked her, it's like, what's your secret? And she's like, oh, it's the way I talk about money. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, every single morning, I do my prayers and my routines. But one thing about my routine is that every time in the mirror, I grab my red lipstick and I write, I love money and money loves me. And she says, I'll repeat that over and over and over out loud. I'll communicate that. I'll verbalize that over and over out loud until I believe it. And I asked her why. And she's because it's like, it's not about the love of money, but it's the way you talk about money and the way you talk to your money and steward your money. Because what I'm really communicating is that I am attracted to money and money is attracted to me. Because money is a tool and a resource where you're in ebbs and flow. You gotta give value to people in order to receive value. And the best way to give value is by using your words, creating work out there. And the way you talk about money always starts in here in your mind. Are you a communicator who's willing to have open dialogue and conversation about money and learn something maybe you haven't learned before? Or are you the type of communicator that's like, anytime money is brought around or the subject of money is talked about, you close off and you don't put any of your 2 cents. You talk to yourself like, you know what, I'm not worthy. I don't know if I can make that much money. I don't know if I'm capable of that, or hey, that's too much money, that's not for me. Or are you communicating in a way where it's a healthy relationship with money and you're willing to have money conversations? Because money conversations turn into money opportunities, and those money opportunities turn into money in your bank account, into growing your finances and investing it. That finances alone, how communication and finances could go hand in hand, could be a whole separate masterclass within itself, but we got more areas to cover. So that's number three, finances. What I'll leave with you on that one is, how are you talking to money and what's your perception of money, especially when it comes to communication, and going out there to surround yourself with other people that are willing to open to talk about money. And that way, when you talk about money, you could actually grow your money and your finances. Number four is health. Health is a big one. Health, when it comes to communication, the way that this one finally got realized is, if you look out there, some of the healthiest people that you know in your life, and maybe some people who are not so healthy in their life, and you know that they could be healthier. But if you notice, those two people have a different way of communicating. One person communicates in a way that is confident, courage, and discipline. The other one communicates in a way that is undisciplined, maybe it's lazy, or lack of integrity. Because the thing that I notice about people who are really healthy and studying their communication is that they have this self-love and this self-respect for themselves, because they know that they only have one body in this life. They only have one shot at this life and one go around, because you only get to live life once. So I might as well have a healthy body and talk to myself in that way. Versus the other person who is not so healthy and goes through those seasons of unhealthiness. I've been it, and I paid attention to, how is my internal communication when it comes to health? What is my internal communication like when it comes to health? And what do I mean by that? Because the person who is unhealthy, what they're internally communicating is that, I don't want to do that. I want to quit every time things get hard, or this seems like too much work, so I'm not going to do it. Or maybe that unhealthy person starts that routine, and next thing you know, they break their word. They communicated all the things they were going to do, all the fitness goals they had for 2026, but halfway through January, they're like, nope, we're not doing it anymore. It's too hard. versus the healthy person, they're their own cheerleader. They're motivating themselves in their mind. Even when things get hard, they are willing to be disciplined. Even when things get difficult, they're not going to quit because they know that the greater reward of having a healthier body is much more amazing than having an unhealthy body or an unhealthy mind. So communication, if you're noticing the trend right now, a lot of the communication in the areas of your life got to do with your subconscious, the way your internal communication is. Because the way you internally communicate is what you're going to externally communicate to the world. And physical appearance, body image is one form of communication. We're always communicating visually, we're always communicating verbally, and believe it or not, we're also communicating internally, because what you believe inside your mind is what will be externally communicated out to the world. And people can sense that. So we covered the first 4 parts already. Let's go into the last 4 parts, and then we're gonna open up for Q&A to dive deeper into one of the subjects that you have. The next one that I said that we're gonna talk about is going to be, let's do career and business. So here's the thing about career and business. What I notice, working jobs or building businesses, is that your ability to communicate really well will determine how successful you become in your career, how successful you become in business and your businesses. So let me share about the career part. Everyone knows that person, or maybe you've been that person where you're looking for a promotion, but the promotion doesn't happen. You're looking for this deal to close, but the deal doesn't close. Or maybe that extra bump in salary, but it doesn't end up happening. And that's because what you're facing is a communication problem. The people who get promoted, the people who get salary raises, the people who close more deals, they do that because they're great communicators. They know how to articulate their value. They know how to communicate and present themselves in front of people and show people what they're worth, saying, hey, I believe that I am qualified for XYZ and XYZ because of my rapport, because of my results. And they're willing to step up and own their voice and share it and have that meeting, communicate what their worth is, get rejected multiple times in order to get that yes. They're willing to communicate an extra mile. And that's why you notice that sometimes there's people out there that are so smart, that are so intelligent, that they're brilliant, but they're not getting paid what they're worth. And that's because they're not willing to speak up on their value. They're not willing to speak up on who they are. They would rather stay closed off and timid and not share with the world how valuable they really are. And communication is the skill and the tool that supports people in getting people to know what they're worth and getting people to move that career progression and that business. Especially as an entrepreneur, this one's a no-brainer, but in entrepreneurship and business, the way a business survives is revenue. If you're not producing any revenue in your business, then your business is bleeding. Your business is dying. The way to produce revenue is sales. And in order to produce sales, guess what comes before sales? Communication. And your ability to communicate, to be able to create these products and services and share with the people out there in the world what is it that you're creating and what problems does it solve? And communication is tied to that. So many people start off learning communication because they want career progression and business progression. Next thing you know, you find out that communication is in every single area of your life. So that is going to be for career and business. My challenge to you, especially when it comes to career and business, is where are you not articulating your value? And by you communicating your value to people, how much more money can you make? How much more impact can you make in your business and the people around you? All because you decided to work on your communication skills. Going now into relationships. This one's going to be number 6. We're almost to the end here. Relationships. This one's interesting because for some people, relationships can mean your significant other, your spouse. It can mean a girlfriend or boyfriend that you're dating, a person you're dating. It could be your friends. It could be a relationship with yourself. Depending on what season you're in, you're always communicating with relationships. The trickiest part about relationships is that when you're communicating, especially in your relationships in your life, you're not communicating with logic. Most of the time, you're communicating with feelings and emotions. You're dealing with human beings that are going through a human experience that is in relation to what you're going through as well. So the way I could share this right here on how communication is related to relationships is this thing called emotional intelligence. In the past life I used to live, thought I had all these great relationships around me, but they were always really surface level. And the reason why they were surface level was because anytime a relationship of mine would talk about emotions or talk about feelings or talk about something important or be vulnerable or share something big, I was always closed off. I was always resistant. I wouldn't want to go deeper because I didn't know how to communicate with emotional intelligence. Being able to sit with someone in the feelings, in the emotions. A picture that comes to mind right now is this. And if you ever had someone that, passed away, or maybe there's been a tragic accident in your life and you share it with someone and you notice how they get uncomfortable or they don't know what to tell you, they kind of freeze and it kind of becomes awkward versus that person that you could share bad news with and maybe someone passed away or maybe something big happened in your life and they just know how to communicate to make you feel better. They're acknowledging your emotions. They're sitting with you in the feelings of it and they just make you feel warm versus the other person that when you share those type of emotions, they become awkward. They become kind of resistant or they kind of shy away from it. And that's the value of being able to learn how to communicate in relationships. And the key about 2026 and so forth is in order to grow deep, intimate, successful relationships, it requires you to communicate from an emotional, intelligent perspective instead of a logical perspective. That means with your spouse. That means with your significant other, with your friends, with yourself, most importantly. If you're able to talk to yourself in a really nice, healthy way, what can't you do in this world? How much more confident will you feel? How much more courageous would you feel? So relationships important when it comes to communication because that's how we stay in touch with people. Whether it's through text, whether it's through call, in person, one-on-one. We're always in relationship to something. Last two to summarize here is community. This one's simple. You can't spell the word community without the word communicate. When you're in a community, your job and your responsibility as a communicator is to communicate what your gifts and your talents and your strengths are to that community. Because when you go into a community, anywhere it is, whether it's your church, your school, your job, your hobbies, your extracurriculars, activities, your job is to go in there as a giver, to go give value to those people. Because when everyone's giving to each other, they're giving their resources, they're giving their tools, they're sharing their strengths, their superpowers, their gifts, that's when you start building this sense of community and this sense of belonging. Because you're communicating with each other, you're in relationship with each other, and the way you communicate, especially when it goes to community, makes a big difference. On the other side, if you're an ineffective communicator, sometimes people go into communities with the mindset of taker. They just go in there to just learn, to get resources, and then take those resources and go somewhere else. But they never bring something to the table. So an effective communicator communicates, hey, here's what I bring to the table. Here's what I want to give. Here's how I want to provide support. And I want to build this all stuff with you. So that's community. The last one right here that we'll share and end it with is education. Education turned into wisdom. And if you think of some of the best communicators in the world, like Martin Luther King, King Solomon in the Bible, King David, we have people like Muhammad Gandhi. All of these people are really wise figures. And notice that they also have the similar trait of being really great communicators. Now, what do I mean by that? How does that break down? Because think of it like this. When you are on a meeting or you're in a class or you're reading a book, the first thing that happens is you get really nice information. You get really nice information. But that information just stays information. Cool, you have information. What are you gonna do with it? The next step of information is turning that information into knowledge. Knowledge comes from repeating that information over and over again. Now you're studying that book, you're studying that class, and it turns into knowledge where you can have an accurate conversation about it. You could talk about it with people. However, when knowledge turns into experience, that's the next level. The way to turn knowledge into experience is by actually applying what you learn. For example, on this call, in this video, you got lots of information and maybe you'll rewatch it again or go and study it again. and it'll turn into knowledge. However, if you don't take something from this call and actually apply it, it won't turn into experience. Because when you apply the knowledge that you're learning, the knowledge that you've consumed, it turns into experience. And when you have experience, you can get paid for your experience. You become more valuable for your experience. You now have real life experiences that you could tie to, like, yes, this is how communication is related to my relationship with my daughter. This is how communication is related to my relationship with my business, XYZ, because now you're putting things into practice. The final piece on how to turn education into wisdom is to communicate it. The way experience turns into wisdom is by sharing and teaching others what you have learned and being able to take other people on a journey that they are learning as well. Someone who has wisdom is someone who can teach the information, get someone to soak up the knowledge, and get someone to create their own experiences. And that's what has made all these figures and these leaders in our past time, like Solomon, like David, like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, to be such wise figures, because they don't just talk the walk, they actually walk it, and they also teach other people how to walk the same things that they're teaching. That is what turns into potent, valuable information that turns into wisdom. And the way that was achieved was by communicating it to others, not holding it back, but by actually giving the gift to other people. So those are the 8 areas of communication, how it's directly related to all these areas of your life. We covered faith, finances, family, health, relationships, career and business. We covered community, and we covered education and wisdom. So we're going to end it right there and open up the floor for questions and answers and what your takeaways are. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned a ton of different value and you're able to get awareness from where is it that you gotta grow your communication skills in. You gotta grow your communication skills in the area of faith, maybe be more bold in communicating your beliefs, or do you gotta grow your communication in your relationships, being able to be emotionally intelligent and being with that human being? Or do you gotta grow your communication when it comes to your career and business so that you can articulate your income and increase your value, attracting more finances and more abundant in your life? Or, hey, next time you step into a community, go and give your gifts. Go be a giver. Go share your resources, your talents, your superpowers, and all the things that you bring to the table. So that was the Communication Wheel of Life. That's the conclusion of episode number 3, Faith-Driven Leadership with Eliam Fuentes. We go live every single Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific time on Zoom, where we spend the first part of our calls connecting, building community, seeing what people's wins and gratitudes are. Then we go into the value teaching segment, which is what you watched on YouTube. And the third part is you get to receive questions and answers and any coaching or any concerns that you want to be addressed and go into a deeper dive on how this relates specifically to you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, like and comment what your favorite takeaway was from all of this, and we'll see you next week again.